My best friend since elementary school, who I'll call Alice, passed away in February from cancer. She had a 2-year-old daughter who went into the custody of her mom after she passed away, who I'll call Alexis. Last month, Alexis showed up on our doorstep unannounced, telling my husband he needs to take responsibility for his child and either take custody or start finally paying child support. She says that Alice had told her when her daughter was born who the father was, but didn't want anything to do with him. To answer the inevitable, Alice was a traveling nurse and made a lot of money, which is the only reason I can think of for why she didn't go for child support. During this conversation, my husband had the worst panic attack he's ever had, so we had to end the conversation before I could get more details. My husband's story is, I don't even know. He said that Alice's daughter is probably his, but that it isn't what I think. Almost 3 years ago, we threw a large housewarming party as we just moved into our dream home. After I finally finished residency and I was set to make real money for once. Alice was in town and set to be at the party, but I was called into work before she got there. I didn't get back until after 3 a.m. Party was winding down. My husband was passed out upstairs, and Alice had already left the party, which at the time I did find strange, as we hadn't seen each other in months. My husband claims he woke up in the middle of the night to Alice on top of him, but he passed out again before he could say anything. He claims he never told me because he was worried I wouldn't believe him, which I don't know if I do. He showed me some texts he sent his best friend the next day, asking for his advice about him thinking someone took advantage of him. But if he cheated, he could have had that conversation as evidence, especially since he never said Alice specifically. Ever since the party, he's been very distant with Alice, and after she had her daughter, he would even find excuses not to be around the house when she would visit at all. I don't know if that's because he cheated or if Alice did actually take advantage of him, and this was his trauma response. Honestly, Reddit, I don't know what to do. I've known Alice since we were children, and she had never come across as that kind of person. But I've also known my husband for over a decade, and he's not once ever given the inclination of a cheater. He's an attractive guy, and I've seen the looks he gets at the gym, and he's never even given more than a glance. What the hell should I do? How do I figure out what the truth is here when Alice isn't even around to defend herself? She never even implied she liked my husband, let alone wanted to sleep with him. I told my husband he needs to get a DNA test before anything is decided on the child's part, but in the meantime, he needs to move out while I think about what I'm going to do here. Wow, OP, that is a mess. Paternity test for sure. The old text the next day sealed it for me. I think your friend took advantage of your husband. Good luck. This is the story of the day for me. There are a lot of comments suggesting a DNA test, but I think you and your husband should consider talking to a family lawyer first to determine what may happen if the DNA establishes paternity. In all likelihood, his name is not on the birth certificate if Alice was hiding this encounter. I also don't know how your jurisdiction handles parental obligations in situations of being taken advantage of. Your husband does not seem to be fighting the possibility, so a DNA test won't necessarily solve your marital issues, and it may expose him to responsibility, financial and otherwise, that he clearly is not wanted for the last 2 years. I don't know you or your marriage, but I think I would be inclined to believe and support my husband with the few details you've given. OP responds to Alice's behaviors when visiting her at home, and if Alice would tell her about the affair. OP: not that I'd noticed. She'd always been at least a little standoffish towards him as she thought I could do better. The first time she visited after she gave birth, she asked where he was since he wasn't home, for the first time, but she never asked again after that. I hadn't thought about that actually, thank you. That's a good point. She always thought I could do better than him, so if it was an affair, you'd think she would have told me on her deathbed at least. Original poster on if her husband drinks or not. OP says, not at all. He rarely drinks, and generally only at parties, which at our ages are few and far between. He works a tough and stressful job, so I figured once he was buzzed, he laid down and fell asleep. Not that he had drank more than normal or anything like that. Did Alice ever name the father of her baby? OP says, she told me it was a man she met while in another state for work. Short-term fling. Willicious says, wait, I get that you need to process all this, but you've told the potential victim of sexual assault that he needs to leave his home, his safe place, and you, his safe person. I think you've jumped the gun a bit here and shunned your life mate, who may have been taken advantage of. OP says, yes, I'm starting to realize I've made a terrible mistake. Update. After talking with you, I've come to the realization that my husband is being truthful. My best friend took advantage of him. Several people pointed out that with Alice not liking my husband, if it was an affair, she would have told me when she was dying, if only to separate us. You're absolutely right. I was there, in the room while she passed. I held her hand for days. We talked about so much. If it was just an affair, she would have told me. But if she took advantage of my husband, she wouldn't have said a word. That's the type of thing horrible people take to the grave. I've also come to the realization that I made a terrible mistake asking my husband to leave for a few days while I gather my thoughts. Not to make excuses, but losing my best friend to cancer, a long cancer fight at that, was brutal. To say that I was devastated wouldn't do it justice. That it happened only 6 months ago, I'm still feeling it every day. So to have this thrown on me, it's like I'm losing her all over again. Either she betrayed me and ducked my husband, or she betrayed me and took advantage of my husband. Not only have I lost her, but now I've lost the good memories, an entire lifetime's worth. It was impossible for me to look at him and not also see her, and be stuck with the horror and realization of that loss all over again. I felt I needed to be able to break down, grieve, and think without the fresh wave of loss I got every time I saw him. It was wrong of me to ask him to leave. You're right, though. And as of a few minutes ago, I've righted this wrong. I called my husband, I apologized, told him I believed him, and begged him to come home. He'll be here in half an hour at most, and I'm going to support my husband the way I know he would have supported me. You've helped me realize not only that I was wrong, and being stupid at that, but that I was hurting the person that needed me the most. I was selfish. I have no idea what we're going to do as far as the potential daughter is concerned, but I can assure you, we'll deal with it together. It's going to take a lot of time, and probably a lot of therapy, to grieve this new loss. I feel numb now, as though I'll never cry again. My best friend took advantage of my husband, which means she was no friend of mine. She flaunted it, coming to my house, sitting with me, and gabbing. She brought her child here, trying to rub it in his face, right in front of me. She tortured the man I love, and I was unknowingly party to it. I feel sick to my stomach over how many times she came over, just to hold it over him. I'm honestly at a loss on how to make that up to him. If you all have any ideas, please feel free to give them to me. I think I'll need all the help I can get. Tomorrow, I'm going to take a leave of absence from work, just until we can figure out our next steps, and we can get our heads on straight. Thank you, everyone.
So here's some context. My dad left my mom while she was pregnant, had another child shortly after, half-brother, then married my stepmother, and had 3 more kids. My dad was never that involved in mine or half-brother's life. I saw him once a year at my grandparents' house, but I visited my grandparents weekly. I found out when I was 8 that stepmother's kids didn't know that half-brother or I existed. Grandparents would hide our pics. I was told by grandparents that stepmother didn't want them to know about us. My dad died when I was 10, and I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral. Grandparents told me stepmother had forbidden me from coming. Obviously, this was really difficult for a 10-year-old and badly affected my mental health and grieving. I went to counseling but suffered with severe depression for years. When I was 17, I went into grandparents' address book when they were sleeping and got her email. I wrote a long email to her, telling her how being stopped from attending the funeral and being kept secret from stepmother's kids had affected my mental health for years, and I had suffered severe depression as a result. I told her I wanted to meet my brothers and that it was evil that we'd been kept secret. I admit to a flair for the dramatic at that age, so I titled the email, "You'll want to read this. It concerns your dead husband." Yikes. She never responded to me and forwarded the email to my grandparents and told them I needed help. I didn't contact her again until my granddad died. I was again told that I could not come to the funeral, but now I was 23 and perfectly capable of crashing a funeral. So I turned up. My grandmother left without speaking to me, which was weird. After, I approached stepmother, introduced myself, and she said she was going to visit my dad's grave. I asked her to show me where it was, because I'd never been allowed to know. She was shocked by this and said I should have known that, and that she'd never hidden me or half-brother and stopped us from attending the funerals. It was all grandmother, not sure why. Maybe some outdated ideas about out-of-wedlock kids. Since then, half-brother has met with stepmother's kids and has a relationship with them. I've been thinking about reaching out, but I still resent stepmother because I don't believe she wasn't complicit in erasing me and half-brother. I asked half-brother about what to do. He said I shouldn't reach out to stepmother unless I apologize for that email. I'd not told half-brother about the email, so mother-in-law has brought it up with him recently. I'm 27 now, so this is a 10-year-old email sent by a depressed, grieving 17-year-old who had been lied to for her entire life. And yes, I called stepmother a witch in it and blamed her for things that I know now are largely not her fault. I really don't think I need to apologize, and I definitely don't think she should be holding that against me all these years later. So that's it. Am I the a-hole? I think you're correct that stepmother and grandmother both played a role here. It's not like stepmother could say you weren't allowed to go to your granddad's funeral. And to be honest, your grandmother would say you're allowed to go to her son's. But I don't think stepmother is innocent. If you sent this email saying how could she keep you from it, etc., etc., she could have corrected you then and there. I get the feeling this whole side of the family might be messed up. Or at the very least, grandmother and granddad were pulling strings like puppet masters. Like you didn't find it odd your grandmother and granddad didn't tell you where your dad, their son, was buried. I see two options. 1. No contact everyone besides your brother. 2. Have a sit-down, face-to-face with stepmother and ask her why she never replied. You could also do it with your grandmother, but I think she's already evil. I guess that you're not the a-hole, but as far as who is the a-hole, I'm unsure. Given stepmom's shocked reaction to finding out you didn't even know where your dad's grave is, her assurance she had nothing to do with your being erased, which was actually between your grandma and but had to be your dad. It does seem that you sent an attack email to someone who didn't deserve it. As an adult who has learned what the anguished 17-year-old didn't know, an apology doesn't seem unreasonable. Not clear if stepmother is holding the email against you, so much as still hurt by your accusations, which were based on lies told to you by others. To be honest, it seems like the real villain in your tale is your grandma. My sister-in-law, 33, her boyfriend, and their 2 kids have been staying with me, 25, and my boyfriend, 27, at our place for a few weeks, since they are renovating their home. I was on the fence about it when they asked, because I've been working on this huge project for work recently, and I really need to be fully focused, because I am hoping to get a promotion, and having 4 people staying with us may be distracting, but they promised it would be fine. I eventually said yes because I felt bad for them and understand it's complicated to find another alternative with the kids. It was fine at first, but they got more and more comfortable. They started completely disregarding everything I had asked. I was having to clean up after everyone. They were eating things I had bought for myself. I have a lot of allergies, so my food choices are restricted. The kids broke a lamp while playing soccer in the house, and when I confronted my sister-in-law about it, she told me kids will be kids. Those are just things. I shouldn't be upset with the kids just having a good time. Last night, I lost it. My boyfriend is out of town, and I came home from work late. And when I arrived, they had invited friends over for dinner and drinks. I decided to go work in my office and ask them if they could keep it down because I had a big presentation coming up and I still have a lot of work to do. I planned to talk to them about it later when we were alone. In my office, I saw that my documents had been scribbled on, and someone had played on my computer and accidentally deleted some important files. Thankfully, I had downloaded them onto my laptop as well. I called my boyfriend and told him I couldn't do it anymore, and they need to find another place to stay. He completely supported me. I gathered myself and went into the living room and told everyone it was time to go. When all their friends had left, my sister-in-law started telling me how I had embarrassed them in front of their friends and that I had no right to ask everyone to leave like that. That's when I told her this is my house and I was allowed to ask people to leave if I wanted to. I told her they had no respect for me or my home and that I wanted them out tomorrow morning. I told her since it's so short notice, I will pay for a few nights for them at a hotel, but they need to figure out the rest alone. I went to bed and didn't let her respond. When I woke up this morning, they were gone. My mother-in-law texted me this afternoon telling me she was extremely disappointed and couldn't believe her son would be with someone so selfish and that I was not welcome at any family events until I apologized to my sister-in-law and her family. My boyfriend is completely on my side and told his mom and sister I will not be apologizing for anything and that they should be the ones apologizing to me. I am starting to think maybe I was a bit harsh. I also hate that my boyfriend is putting his relationship with his family at risk for me. So, am I the a-hole for kicking them out? Your husband's parents have done something here where they have let one of their children grow to adulthood with an incredible amount of entitlement. Your sister-in-law and her family didn't act like appreciative guests. They acted like they were in their own home, and probably even worse. It sounds like your sister-in-law is a brat, and she's fully prepared to raise brat kids. If your in-laws can't accept that you were completely reasonable and accommodating up to your limits, then that says far more about their a-holishness than yours. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. You are not the guest here. They are. I'm curious if mother-in-law let them stay at her house, or if she was selfish and said no. If mother-in-law is so offended that you won't continue to house her little monsters in her family, then she should house them. Of all of the horrible things they did while they were there, I'm most blown away by them inviting friends over. Not only without permission, but without discussion with their host. Very definitely not the a-hole, but I'd recommend letting your boyfriend field all of these issues. He's already proven that he is up to the challenge and is willing to stand by you. My 26 female, husband, 27 male, and I have been together for 8 years. We moved away from our hometown 2 years ago after his promotion. Every week we drive 2 hours to visit our parents. We visit his on Friday night and mine on Saturday. His parents, especially his mom, 51 female, are very conservative and have always had a house rule that we cannot sleep in the same bedroom until we were married. Ever since we got married, the rule has changed to that we are not allowed to have sex under their roof, as they see it as disrespectful. While visiting, we always have a glass of wine at dinner, so driving elsewhere isn't really an option, and we almost always spend the night there and go to my parents' house for lunch the next day. The last time we visited, my husband noticed their bedside clock wasn't working, and when he tried to fix it, he noticed there was a micro SD card, and then he noticed the lens of a camera behind the display. My husband laughed it off and assumed they must have accidentally bought it, but I felt something was up. When he laughingly showed them the camera in the morning, not only were they not surprised, but his mom said that they bought it to make sure the house rules were being followed. I freaked out and confronted her about violating our privacy, and my husband was also upset by their distrust and disregard for our personal space. I refused to stay any longer, and we went straight to my parents' house. All I could think about on our drive there was about the few times we did have sex, and I'm scared it's recorded somewhere. But she hasn't said anything, so maybe the camera was a new thing. Ever since then, I refused to go there, and my husband drops me at my parents' before going to his. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your mother-in-law is a controlling and terrible mother-in-law. You'd be right to never go to her house again or go no contact. I think you need legal to check that all recordings have been deleted. What if she gets mad or someone else in the family puts it online or views it? It's a camera in the bedroom. Are both parents watching you get undressed, have sex? Do they have recordings of such events? I don't understand how your husband is accepting of this. Or is he in on it? Not the a-hole. Stay away. Where there is one camera, there may be more. I would be heartsick to know someone spied on me like that. The psycho-level control. Not the a-hole. I'd never go to their house again and wouldn't invite them into your home. Neutral ground such as a coffee shop or restaurant would be okay. I find it awful she doesn't even see what's wrong with it. Absolutely. Also, every week? They travel 2 hours every single weekend to visit parents? That's insane. Oh, P, cut it back to twice a month or something. Y'all need your own time too. I live with my wife of almost 5 years and 2 of her 3 children. One of them is older and on their own. I have 2 kids from my previous marriage who live with their mom but spend a good amount of time with me since we do not live far. I'm the sole income in our household, as my wife does not work. This is not a problem with me, as I make enough for us to live comfortably. We are not loaded by any means, but we don't have money troubles. My son's mother and I have been talking about buying him a car since he just graduated high school. We're planning on pooling our money and buying him something around $15,000. When I was discussing this with my wife, she told me that by all means, buy the car for him if we want, but my stepdaughter might feel pretty upset. My stepdaughter lives with us. She is 20 and graduated high school 2 years ago. She does not have her own car, and I didn't exactly offer to buy her one when she graduated. Her father is not really in the picture. He lives in another state, and they only see him twice a year, if that. But I think if anyone is responsible for getting her a car, it could be him. I know what he does for a living, and he can certainly afford it. I told my wife that maybe she can talk to her ex about getting a car for her, and maybe I can help out a little bit, but I wouldn't be paying for it on my own. Truthfully, both her and I know how my stepdaughter can be, and she probably would throw some sort of a tantrum if I bought my son a car. He's my son, and I feel I have every right to get him a car, especially since his mother is on board. Would I really be the a-hole for doing this? Yes, the a-hole, I think. Her dad isn't in the picture. That means basically from her perspective, you're the only dad she has, and you're telling her that she's not really as good as your real kid. I can feel that trauma from here. She does not see me as her dad. We have a good relationship, but she was 15 when I met her. I've never really taken a parenting role. Not the a-hole. It's a decision between you and your son's mother to buy him a car, with your money. You are not the father of your stepdaughter, and if your wife wants to buy her a car, then she can pay for it. Not you, since you don't have any obligation. Not the a-hole. As long as you make it clear to everyone, stepdaughter included, that this is a gift from you and your son's mom. She'll probably throw a tantrum, like you said, but you can't let the childish actions of an adult derail your very generous gift. So, my daughter said for her 15th birthday that she wanted to go shopping with both my ex-wife, 51 female, and I, 53 male, and pick out a camel coat, because she's wanted one for a long time. My current wife, 31 female, and our son, 2 male, happened to be there because my wife wanted to buy stuff in the department store we were going to, but she drove herself and our son there in a different car. A very young saleswoman that seemed new comes out and starts helping my daughter out. My ex-wife is standing pretty far away, and my current wife is nearby looking at some winter coats with our son. My daughter finds a coat that she really likes and asks what I think. I tell her that I like whatever she likes, and at this point, she's looking at herself in the mirror. The sales lady then gestures towards my ex-wife and says, "Why don't you go show Grandma and see what she thinks?" My ex-wife is within earshot and very visibly stiffens at the remark. My daughter kind of just looks shocked, and her stepmother interjects and says, "Oh no, I'm not her mom. She's the mom." The salesgirl was very clearly embarrassed and flustered, and the first thing she does is sputter out to my current wife, "I thought you were a bit too young to have a teenager." And then she turns to my ex-wife and very apologetically says, "I am sorry, ma'am," and makes her excuses and pretty much backs away from all of us. My ex-wife's face turns red, and when my daughter tried to speak to her, my ex-wife said, "Excuse me for a minute, I'll be right back." And then she rushed out of the store. My daughter ended up not buying anything, and when my ex-wife came back, my daughter said she'd rather go home and have her birthday cake. On the ride back to my ex-wife's place, my ex-wife muttered that she hoped the salesgirl was new because she clearly didn't know how to deal with customers. I didn't think it was fair for my ex-wife to say rude things about someone who just made an innocent mistake and to still be holding a grudge over a stupid comment. When our daughter was out of earshot, I told her that she didn't have to ruin the day by leaving the store, and that I've been mistaken for somebody's brother that I looked 0% like, and somebody even asked if I was from Mexico when I am not. She started crying and saying that getting mistaken for Mexican when you're actually Italian or Spanish is not the same thing as being called someone's grandmother, and how dare I fault her for her reaction. She then sarcastically said, "Thanks again for helping remind the world of how gracefully I'm aging." Am I the a-hole? I was just defending this poor girl who clearly just spoke her mind. I'm sorry, but yes, the a-hole. First of all, your ex is obviously going to be insecure about the fact that you dumped her and married a woman 20 years younger. Getting called grandma while out with you and your new family is like a slap in the face. How you don't understand that, I have no idea. It was meant to be a nice shopping trip for your daughter. She specifically asked for you and her mom. Whether or not that's okay is irrelevant. You agreed to the trip. Then, your new wife is there, obviously not as far away as you thought, since the sales assistant knew she was with you. That was an a-hole move too. She could have gone shopping anytime. Yes, the a-hole, for allowing your current wife to be there at all, when it was obviously not what your daughter wanted. She just happened to be in the same store at the same time. Right. If you honored your daughter's wishes in the first place, the situation would never have come up. Yes, the a-hole. Why did you have family number 2 hovering during the shopping experience? Why can't you give your daughter 20 minutes of quality time for her birthday without involving family number 2? Also, your wife's reaction was reasonable and she did not make a scene. And also, I work in sales. She was a crappy salesperson. You should never assume something like that and then say it out loud. There is no benefit if you are right and can lose you a sale if you're wrong, which is exactly what happened. Never assume someone is pregnant, or the gender of a child either.